afternoon, everyone. It's so exciting to be here with you. Welcome to Narrative Medicine. I'm Dr. Karen Parker. Let's take a moment because we've got a really, I would say, robust time ahead of us. We've got a lot of stuff we want to cover, a lot of things I really want to share with you. And I want to make sure that you know that you are here and that you are welcome. So if you want to take a moment, if you go down to the bottom of your Zoom page, you'll see there's like a little bubble and it says chat. You would just take a moment and hop out in the chat and just say where you're from so we can greet you and welcome you and call you in. We are going to be talking about stories and who we are and how we are. Oh, there we go. Everybody's jumping in. Minnesota, California, Houston, Texas, Calgary, Indiana, Ottawa, Canada, the Netherlands, Decatur, Georgia, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Palm Springs, Canada, LA. I feel like I live in Canada. Your forest, the terrible fires you all have had, we've had all the smoke. So it rained the other day, and all the particles from all the smoke that we've been experiencing the last couple weeks ran off the roof of my house into the pond next to my house. So it's kind of little Canada at my house. Zooming in from Sweden, Southwest England, Texas, Pennsylvania, Montaro, Las Vegas, India, Sacramento, the Netherlands, Cicero, New York, Montreal, Ohio. I lived in Ohio for a little bit. In Cleveland. I lived in Cleveland and then in Monroe. Los Angeles, Virginia, Texas again, Ontario, Big Island of Hawaii, aloha. Atlanta, Glastonbury, hey Ray, Philadelphia, Richmond, Dubai, welcome, Marietta, California, Tampa, Alabama, Illinois, Copenhagen, Minnesota, South Africa. Wow, we're just from everywhere. I love this. Every time we do this, it's so exciting to me because we can create community, right? Even though we're not hugging each other, which would be optimal, we're still here together. And right now, especially given where we are in the times and just where we are in the shifts on the planet, how beautiful is it that you all are coming together with intention to explore your story and to really look at how is your story impacting your life. So I'm just going to keep scrolling through this. There's like a lot of you from all over the place. So we got Arizona, Norway, Florida. I know I'm skipping some of you and I'm so sorry, but welcome. It's so good to have you all here. So yeah, virtual hug, let's hug. And really just great to be here with you all. So I want to say thank you for joining us. And I have a couple of things I want to start with before we get rolling. The first thing I want to start with is it's my 60th birthday next week, so I feel like I get a little bit of leeway to say what I want to say. But the first thing that I just want to say is I've noticed lately that many of us, me included, that there's this sense of like overwhelm and like it's too much and we're looking at stuff but we're not really participating. We're looking at stuff and kind of almost contracting. And I want to just really encourage you right now that if you are feeling like you have to pull back, and like I said, I feel this too. Right now, there's a part of me that feels like I have to pull back a little bit because I have a vision. I have a big dream for especially the next 10 years of my life. And I feel like if I don't like put a bubble around this dream, it's very easy for me right now to lose connection to my own inner narrative. And I know that for many of us, we're pulling back to protect ourselves and to really stay connected to that. And that's beautiful. And if you're feeling triggered by what's happening on the planet right now, I'm so glad you're here because I want to unpack that a little bit today. You know, we are contracting part and parcel because we're reacting. And when I say reacting, I'm not necessarily saying that you're being emotionally disruptive or you're throwing things in your house. I'm saying there is a part of you that's still stuck in the tape loop that's reacting of old narratives and old stories. If we stand in the full power of our creative essence, then there's nothing out here that can knock us off what's in here. And that's a lot of what I want to share with you today, right? We have to take back control of our stories because when we are telling our story and we're in control of our story, then we're the ones doing the creating. And if we're not taking back control of the story, then you run the risk of actually being a character in somebody else's story. You're living out a story, sometimes all of us, sometimes we're all living out a story that isn't even happening on the planet anymore, but we're still reacting to it. And so um, today and tomorrow, we're going to talk about those stories. And today, my goal is to help you begin to really get clear about where are the stories coming from? What's making your story the story that it is, right? And then tomorrow, I'm going to show you some really practical ways that you can start taking back control over that story, not only for your optimal health and wellness physically, but for your money, for your relationships, for your work, for your creative fulfillment, for the world. And so my intention for you today is to give you a lot of really good grounded information. I want to start off with something else. When we react and when we're experiencing fear or reacting to that old pattern, it also triggers fight or flight. And it might not be triggering it in a massive way. You might not be, anxious. Hopefully you're not anxious while you're here, but it can trigger a certain amount of anxiety. And part of that's just, our brains are on high alert. We're paying attention. We're a little concerned about what's happening. And, I want to just say when I teach a class, I usually have two goals. And the first goal is the one that eclipses everything. The first goal is the goal that makes me feel like the night before a masterclass series, like I can't sleep because I'm so excited and I can't wait to teach and share information. So my number one goal is to give you workable information that you can take home and play with and do. I hate it when I go to a masterclass series and they give me like a little drip of a seed of something and they say to me, oh, hey, you can have the rest of the data, but you have to buy this thing first. I have never played that game. I'm not going to play that game with you. But I do want to be really honest with you and be upfront with you because I also hate it when I go to a masterclass series and I know like somebody's going to sell me something and I can't really hear what they're saying because I'm listening for, okay, when's the marketing pitch going to drop? And so I just want to tell you up front today that about 2/3 of through the presentation today, I'm going to tell you about a professional training that I'm offering, and I'm going to give you a special discount. And I'm telling you this because I want you to relax. I want you to know it's coming. And if it's something that calls to you, that's been laid on your heart, and you are inspired by it, awesome. I'm just showing you the path. And if not, if you're that's not where you're at right now, that's not your call, that's not where you go. I don't want you to be anxious about it and I don't want you to be worried about it. I want you to stay here for the whole program because I've got content for you here that's going to help you take back control over your story. I'm telling you this up front because I don't want you to be anxious, worried. I don't want you to start thinking about money. I don't want you to start thinking about, it's coming and it might be for you and it's coming and it might not be for you. And that doesn't mean you're not going to get something of tremendous value today. So please, please, please listen to what I bring to you today because my main overarching goal, and this is the goal of everyone I work with that I have the privilege of working with here in Team Quantum, is to make sure you walk away today and tomorrow with an understanding of how did my story get to be the way that it is and how can I start taking back control over that story. All right, let's get started. Okay. It's always good to test if the slides are moving. Are the slides moving, Hannah?
Yes, they are.
Yay! That's always a good sign. All right. So if I have not had the privilege of meeting you yet, my name is Dr. Karen Parker. I'm the founder and creator of Quantum Human Design and the Quantum Alignment System. I am the author of multiple best-selling books. I am the world's top-selling human design author. I have a PhD in integrative medicine where I looked at the relationship between your story and your immune system. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow. I have been an energy psychology practitioner and an energy healer since 2000, where I became certified to teach, I mean, not to teach, but to use the emotional freedom techniques. I have been a life coach trained since 1998. I was actually one of the very first life coaches trained in the world. I studied with Thomas Leonard. I studied with and worked for Ra Uru Hu. I have been, who is the founder of traditional human design. I have been teaching human design since 1999. I'm a Quantum University guest lecturer. I am a TEDx presenter. I am the host of the Quantum Revolution podcast, which we're just getting ready to gear up and launch our next new season. I'm also an Omega Institute Shift Network and Humanities Team faculty member, and I'm super excited to share with you all that next year in May, I will be back at the Omega Institute in New York doing an extensive narrative rewriting program. So I'm very excited to be there live and to do a whole weekend playing with glitter paint and your story. So, all right. Whoops. I have some housekeeping for you. You should have, and if you haven't had access to this yet, a worksheet handy. You want to keep this handy so you can follow along with the presentation. I know that sometimes when we sit on Zoom, it's like, whoa, and we start to get distracted. So I want you to follow along with this worksheet. It'll help you stay engaged in the material. It is a PDF fillable worksheet. That means you can fill it out online with your computer. And if, of course, if not, you will, if you want to print it, I have to print everything because I'm still physical pen and pencil kind of gal. But take good care of it and fill it out. Part of why we want you to take good care of it and fill it out is that we're going to be randomly selecting, oops, I can't see this, two people. Is that right? Two people, Hannah, is that what that says?
Yes.
Okay, two people a day for today and tomorrow who are here live on the call to receive a limited edition of a quantum alignment system tote, which I love. I'm going to keep one for myself, as well as a signed quantum wellness book, which is my brand new book. It's not out yet. It's coming out next Wednesday, August the 20th. And if you want to grab your copy of Quantum Wellness, you can do that too. So do your homework, stay on the call. We are going to randomly select people today, two people today. We'll announce the recipients tomorrow, and we'll pick two people tomorrow who can win a tote bag and a signed copy of my new book. So, we are going to talk today about how to live your life as the person you were born to be. And I want to start with, in case you forgot, that literally there has never, ever been anybody like you in the entire universe. Ever, ever. There's never been anybody like you before. There will never be anybody like you again. You are literally a once in a life and once in a cosmic lifetime event. You have a unique and vital and irreplaceable role to play in the cosmic plan, and the universe needs you to be the person you were born to be. But sometimes in the journey of being who we are, we forget who we are. We forget that person we were born to be. So, my goal is to give you some insights today on how you forgot, what made you forget the person you were born to be, and how can we start getting you back on track to be that person that not only you want yourself to be, but the world really needs you to be. So, we're going to start first by talking about basic quantum creativity. So, when I talk about creativity, I'm talking about your ability to make things happen in your life. It's literally, it's not glitter, it's not glue, it's not art, it's not drawing, it's not all those things that sometimes we learn in our journey that maybe we're not good at. You are a very good creator. You were born a creator. You are a cosmic creator. And when I talk about quantum creativity, I'm talking about your natural and innate ability to create in your life from the story that you tell the life that is the expression of who you are. So when we talk about quantum creativity, we're talking about your ability to write and translate your story into material expression on the planet, manifesting it as the fulfillment of your story. Now, when we talk about quantum creativity, there are components in the quantum creativity equation. So if you've ever attended any of my webinars before, you're going to hear something that you might have heard before. And as somebody who has taught this now probably hundreds of times in the last 10 years, every time I teach this, I get a little bit of a rethink on it, a little bit of a reframe on it. So I want to encourage you, even if you've heard this before, to listen to it with fresh ears, because you're going to hear something in this that hopefully will land a little bit differently, that will give you a little bit more of an aha or epiphany or an insight that's going to help you continue to take back control over your own story. So when we look at what are the components of your creative power, your creativity, the first thing I want you to understand is right now, and take a moment really, like, look at where you are. I'm standing, maybe you're sitting. If you're driving, maybe don't do this, but Just take a moment and look around you. You are at this moment standing in a field of unseen possibilities. Now, just because you can't see those possibilities doesn't mean they're not there. They're just unseen because they're not manifest yet, but they're there. And actually, if you were a quantum physicist, you could actually figure out how they work and where they are. You're sitting literally in a field of limitless possibility, completely infinite potential. That means anything you can think of is already there. And I mean, actually, when you're thinking about it, it's literally already there. Because here's the thought: your brain is a physical manifested organ, right? We know you have one. If we reached inside your skull, you could squish it. You have a brain. It's a physical organ. It's connected to your body. It's making everything work. It's thinking, it's producing biochemicals. It's a powerful translator of the quantum field. When you are having a thought, so if you're in the shower and you get this amazing idea, that happens to me all the time. When you are having that thought, because that thought is already happening in your physical brain, which is actually not part of the unmanifest reality, your physical brain is part of the manifest reality. The fact that you're having the thought says that thought or that creation or that manifestation or that intention or that dream is already being made manifest on the planet because it's already happening at a biochemical level inside your body, which is a third dimensional manifested reality. So your thoughts aren't floofy things that aren't manifest yet. This goes beyond that. This goes beyond that. If you're having a thought, you're already well on your way. You're sitting in a field of limitless ability, limitless capacity, limitless abundance, and limitless other stuff too. Like last night, we had a skunk that attacked my cat, or my cat attacked the skunk, and it didn't end up well for my cat. And the skunk happened to spray at the entrance of the HVAC system, the air intake system at the outside of my house, and my whole house filled with skunk. That was in my quantum field. I didn't know it was in my quantum field yesterday before it's made manifest. I'd really like to unmanifest it. So it's still pretty stinky in the house. All right, the second part of your equation, the second part of the quantum creative equation is called the mental and the emotional bodies. This is where you hold your story and you carry your conditioning. This is everything you think about yourself. This is everything you feel about yourself. This is the artifacts of all the emotions that you've experienced. This is the thought forms and the belief systems you constructed. This is where you hold societal expectations, familial expectations, everything that makes you think about who you are, the story that you think you are. Your conditioning is what we call this in human design, is held in this energy field that is basically choosing and interpreting the infinite field of quantum possibility and starting the process of translating it into your physical world. It's like a filter. You have also what's called the subtle body. This is your energy field. This is a measurable phenomenon. It's your energy template. Sometimes we call it your aura. And anytime you work, like say with essential oils or flower essences, anytime you do any energy work like Reiki or quantum healing, or if you go visit a really good intuitive or a good psychic, people can read or work with your creativity at this level. When we work at this level, we're really working with the energetic template that's holding in place either what you're about to manifest or what you're in the process of unmanifesting. So if you just got over a cold, the energy of the cold would still be in your aura, even if your body wasn't doing the cold anymore, right? Or if you were about to attract your soulmate and that soulmate, you were about to meet them, that energy of that soulmate might already be in your aura. One of the things that we neglect the most when we work with people, and we work with, especially on the healing level with people, we work on the body and the mind. We deal with the physical manifestation. We often forget or neglect the energetic field that holds the template in place for wellness or disease. And if we're not also working on this energetic level, sometimes we're not stabilizing the changes we make solidly enough for those changes to be able to be sustainable. It's part of why when I work with people, we work with flower remedies because flower remedies do such a beautiful job of tuning the energy field. So really looking at making sure when we're working on creating and shifting and changing our story, we're not just changing our mind, we're not just changing how we behave, we also have to make changes sometimes on an energetic level. It helps make those changes last longer and makes the changes that we make stronger and easier to implement in our lives. The last part of our creative of our reality is our manifested world, right? Your life right now is basically a collection of possibilities and potentials that existed in the unmanifest form in the quantum field at first. And then your beautiful story, your mental and emotional body, took those ideas out of the quantum field, took those inspirations out of the quantum field, translated them into the physical world, and created your current reality. Let me show this to you in a little bit of a different way. This is kind of a simplified version of what I just shared with you. If you look at the bottom, you might see your life right now. At the top of this slide, you'll see the quantum field of infinite possibilities, and across the middle, there's like a filter. And what lives in this filter is your mental body, your emotional body, your conditioning, and your human design. And that filter is looking at all of these infinite fields of possibility, all of these potentials for your life, and it's choosing the options that matches your story. So if you're telling a really big, abundant story and your unconscious is looking at the quantum field of infinite possibilities, that story about I believe in infinite abundance for myself, that story is pulling those infinite abundant opportunities into your life. If your story is a little more contracted, if it's a story that maybe is rooted in fear or still rooted in familial expectations, societal expectations, and it's looking out at what's possible, you can't see all the possibilities because you're funneling what's possible through this very teeny tiny story. If you want to shift your life, you have to start with the filter. I love this quotation because I believe this to actually really truly be true. The universe is made of stories, not atoms. This is a quotation from Muriel Roy Kaiser. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But if you think about it for a minute, if you think that, go back to that quantum field, and we always want to understand it from science, right? It's all these atoms. It's actually much smaller than atoms, these quantum particles moving around, right? What if the universe is actually made of stories? And those quantum potentials are just stories. And we get to pick the stories or the parts of the story that we choose. That's actually how it works, right? You are the story that you tell about yourself. So if we look at this on a quantum level, let's see if we can get this to go. If we look at this on a quantum level, quantum scientists can measure the movements of quantum particles. So if we go back to that quantum field and that infinite field of possibilities, it's really a field that's made of quantum particles, which are basically kind of like light. Quantum particles can either be measured, the movement of quantum particles can be measured, they move in waves, or the location where a particle is located can be measured, but never both at the same time. You cannot measure movement and location at the same time. Part of what happens is when a quantum physicist has an expectation about where a quantum particle is going to show up, it drops out of movement, it stops waving, and it moves into location. It becomes manifest. And when it becomes manifest, it's no longer moving. So you're sitting in this field of waving, moving potentials. When you have an expectation about a potential and you're trying to look for it and measure it and gauge it and translate it, that expectation causes it to stop moving and drop into location, into manifestation. Okay, now the slide's stuck. Okay, hold on a second. Okay. You can only measure the movement or the location of the quantum particles, but never both at the same time. Movement is pure potential and location is manifestation. it's the meaning, the expectations that we have that determine what we manifest. So if you have an expectation that things are going to be great, then that expectation is what's creating your physical experience of the world. And if you have an expectation of, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm safe, if it's okay for me to be who I am or how I am, if there's some part of you that has an expectation, maybe it's not going to be so great, then that is also what we collapse or drop or manifest into our reality. So the meanings that we have, those expectations, are determined by our conditioning field. That's the mental and the emotional body. And I'm going to break those down in great depth because I want you to understand, where does your story come from? Your story today, how did you get here? And we're going to talk extensively about that in just a little bit. And if you want to create a different state of well-being in your life, if you want to change what you're experiencing in your life, if you want a healthier body, if you want a different relationship with money, if you want to have a better relationship with your partner, your friends, or your family, if you want more creative fulfillment, if you want meaningful work, and that's not what you're experiencing right now, if you want to create that, and that's really the definition of well-being. If you want to create that level of well-being in your life, you have to change the meanings that you have. In other words, you have to start telling the story a little bit differently. Those parts of the story that are making you you, if they're not creating what you want, then you have to change those parts of the story, those meanings, so that the story matches what you're wanting. Well, what does this mean? It means our conditioning determines what we create and experience in our lives. So we're going to do a little exercise just for fun. And again, if you've done this before, revisit it. See if your story has shifted at all. I want you to take a moment and just look at this picture. Now, this is American money. If you're in a different country, you can translate this into your own vision of your own currency. And I want you to, either on your worksheet, or you can do this in chat too, I want you to take a moment and write down everything you think about, everything that comes to mind, every belief that you have about your ability to have all the money you need and want. Okay, what stories are you telling yourself and the world about money and your ability to have all the money that you really want? And again, make it quick, bullet list, don't overthink it. Just write it in chat, or if you want to, you can write it down in your worksheet here. Try to get out of here. And let's just take a moment. I'll give you a minute. I won't give you a minute. I'll give you 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Tell me your story about money. And don't read the answers in the chat. Make it your own. And if you're like not posting, I also understand that. Sometimes money is a really tricky thing, right? When we talk about money, because we relate so much of our sense of value, our own self-worth with money. Sometimes if money's not something that we have a good story about, or we're frustrated with the story of money, that can sometimes be shameful. So my intention here is not to trigger shame in you. My intention is to show you your story so that you can start taking back control of it, because you deserve to tell a good story about money. Okay. All right. So some of the answers here: I'm not capable. I'm not worthy. I have to work hard for it. I love cash. Money comes to me easily and ceaselessly. I love that one. I am money. I have to work hard. I'm not capable. I'm unworthy. I'm useless with money. Those are so common. We can change the story, by the way. Future, service, freedom, peace. I will have all the money that I need. I'm the creator of my own reality. It never lasts, goes too fast. You have to work for it. You have to work hard for it. Easy, sufficiency, house, more would be good, independent, freedom. I deserve, don't deserve. I need, I want. I want to be careful with money. So I want you, just as you scroll through this, take a moment and just scroll through all these different answers, right? Lots and lots of answers from all of you. Thank you for being so vulnerable and for being willing to share. Look at the variety of different answers that people have posted about money, right? Some are great, some are weird, some are hard, some are scary, some are We have a lot of different ideas about money, but when we think about money, when we go back and I show you this slide, which let's see, where did my cursor go? When I show you this slide, money is neutral. It's just a thing that we use in exchange for value, right? It's just a noun. But we have our own meanings and sometimes even our own expectations around money. That's part of our story. So let's talk about what just happened here. When you saw that money, that slide with all the money, you started thinking about it. That idea of money, this is how it starts to become manifest, right? That idea of money triggered a photon storm in your brain, a storm of light. That photon storm caused your brain to produce neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters created in response an emotion that was in alignment with your story. So, for example, if you had a story about money that was like, money comes to me easily and ceaselessly, right? And that's your story. When you saw the money, that triggered that story in your brain. Your brain made photons, produced neurotransmitters. That's a physical phenomenon, right? It's measurable in the lab. So you just turned light into matter. And those neurotransmitters created a positive emotional experience in your body. And that positive emotional experience in turn caused your heart to be open, move into a state of coherence, and tap into a highly creative natural state. If the story you were telling wasn't so great, maybe it was a contracted story, a story of holding back, of being afraid or worried, which is a big story a lot of us are dealing with right now, right? That contraction or that anxiety or that fear produced a storm of light and neurotransmitters, which produced an emotion. Those emotions, those not so positive emotions, can oftentimes kick us into a low grade fight or flight or a stress response. That's a non coherent state. And that stress response is actually not a very creative state. When we go into a stress response, the parts of our brain that are associated with creativity, problem solving, right? Those really juicy parts of the human story that happen up here in our brain, they shut down. When we go into fight or flight, we move into very basic brain functions. The brain starts to conserve energy because now we're in survival mode. And we're missing oftentimes opportunities, especially if we're always living in that sort of low grade fight or flight. And the part of the way to get control over that is we got to get control over the story, right? So photons are part of the creative medium. What inspired the movement of those photons in the first place? What produced the light storm in your brain and what neurotransmitters got produced is influenced by your story, right? That unique story, that filter of who you are that's doing all the choosing out of the quantum field is also creating a biophysical response in the body. And that biophysical response is part of manifesting your story. So, if you want to create the reality you want to be experiencing, you have to tell a story that matches what you want. And I want to just say, it's not just telling the story. Some of us are very, very good at just telling the story. We've been doing it for a long time. We've been using affirmations, right? You might even be visualizing. And the story that you tell can't just be the story that you tell with your mouth and your throat. It also is the story of who you are. And so oftentimes for affirmations and all those creative words that we've been taught to use as part of the manifesting process, for those to actually become effective, we also have to change our identity, the story we tell about who we are and how we are, so that the story we tell about who we are, our identity, who we become, matches what we want to create in the world. And that's a really important thing to pay attention to. It's one of the reasons why sometimes affirmations don't work. If you're using affirmations and you're using affirmations and you're using affirmations, you can eventually, over time, possibly train your brain to believe them to be true. But what I have found in both in my research and in my work is that if your sense of lovability and your self-worth and some other factors that I'm going to show you later today aren't in alignment with the story you're telling, what you feel and sense and your identity is going to win over the words. And so it's not just the words, it's creating an identity that fits what you're seeking to create. So if your story is creating your reality, then you have to ask and answer what I think is the most important question in creating. Who are you? And what story are you telling about yourself? In other words, how have you been conditioned? Who is the you that's creating your reality? And how did you get that identity? So if your human design chart shows you, which it does, that you are designed to be abundant, creative, loved and loving, powerful, connected to source, supported and compassionate. That's the high expression of the chart in its totality, right? If that's what you're designed to be, what knocked you off track? If you're off track, what knocked you off track? So we're going to explore a little bit about what knocks us off track. In human design, we call this conditioning, right? Conditioning is the forgetting of the story that we are abundant, creative, loved, loving, powerful, connected to source, supported, and compassionate. That's the story we're born with primarily, but then we forget. We're conditioned and we forget. So in traditional human design, we teach about conditioning that comes from openness. I'm going to actually expand on the story of conditioning a little bit today, and we're going to talk about 5 kinds of conditioning and how that conditioning might be influencing your story. Again, today the goal is to help you figure out how did you get the story that you have. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you how to rewrite the story. So please do your best to come to both presentations, because otherwise I was going to keep you here for 4 hours and I know you guys don't have time for that. So today we're going to discover how did you get the story and how is that story impacting you. Tomorrow we're going to talk about, okay, you are the story right now. How can we take back control? How can we take back control over the narrative? And what kind of medicine do we need to use to shift that narrative and regain sovereignty over the story we tell about who we are and how we are? So we're going to talk today about openness by center, imprinting, generational energy patterns, genetics, and life experiences as the primary causes of you forgetting your creative power. So we're going to start first by looking at your human design chart. So if you have your chart handy, if you're brand new to human design, it's okay. You can still do this. But I want you to get your chart out and I want you to look at your chart. And you'll see that on your chart, there are 9 energy centers. There are 9 geometric shapes. Each one of those shapes, those centers, is responsible for processing specific core energies and working with core archetypes. So when we look at the chart and we look at the centers, we're actually looking at the part of the chart that correlates to the 7 chakras from the Hindu chakra system. And we're looking at the themes and the archetypes in these charts. And most importantly, when we're looking at this through the lens of openness, we're looking at how is your unique chart configured and how is that impacting your story. So I want you to look at your chart and I want you to notice any of the centers, these are the 9 geometric shapes, any of those centers that are white. That is what we call open. Anything in your chart that's white is where you take energy and information in from the world around you. That's where you receive information and receive energy from your relationships, from the transits, mostly from your relationships. Okay, so this energy comes from people and planets. Now, in our open centers, we don't just experience it, we don't feel it, we don't just take it in and feel it, we actually amplify it. And so what happens a lot of times when we look at our open centers is that we mistakenly identify with the parts of our chart that are open because we feel them in such a big way. So if you go over and you look at this chart, you see over on the right-hand side, this triangle, big triangle on the lower right-hand side that says ESP, that stands for emotional solar plexus. If you have that center white on your chart, that means you are an emotional empath. That's not the only way to be an empath. So if you're an empath, but you have it colored in, don't panic. You can still be an empath. If you have the center open, you are an emotional empath. That means you feel the emotional energy in the room. And you don't just feel it teeny tiny bit, you feel it in a big way. That's important to understand because when we look at openness, and we look at the story that we're telling about ourselves, oftentimes we identify with the centers in our chart that are open. If you have an open emotional solar plexus, if you're an emotional empath, you might mistakenly believe that you're very emotional and you're very dramatic and you feel things all the time. And you do. It's not actually your energy, it's actually from the world around you. And when you learn to use that energy and it becomes a source of wisdom and understanding for you, then you can also learn to self regulate that energy. So anything that's white on your chart has a goal. If we think about your chart as being a curriculum or a story, the goal of anything that's white on your chart is to learn to self regulate those energies. So if you're an emotional empath, part of your job is to learn to hold on to your own emotional regulation, no matter what drama might be playing out in the room around you. Anything that's colored in your chart, that's a whole nother lecture, by the way. We won't be talking too much about definition today. But anything that's colored in on your chart, we call this defined. That's the energy that is sourced from within you. That's your soul, part of your soul curriculum, too. Part of the job of anything that's colored in on your chart is to learn to self accept or learn to love and accept these parts of yourself. That's the goal of definition. So you have parts of your chart that you are here to learn to self regulate, and parts of your chart that you're here to learn to accept, learn to love and accept about yourself. Now, when we talk about conditioning by center and we talk about openness, and we're only going to talk about openness today, when we look at the open centers, any of these centers that you have open, they create predictable behavioral patterns. So if you come to me and I run your chart and we start coaching or we start talking about what's going on in your life, I'm going to look first. This is the first thing I'm going to look at. Maybe the second thing I'm going to look at. First, I'm going to look at what's your type. And the second thing I'm going to look at is what do you have open? Because that openness is going to tell me a lot about your story, is going to tell me a lot about how you experience the world. So in the next 9 slides, I'm going to go through each of these centers. I want you to look and see, do I have this center open or defined? If you have it open, I want to just bring your awareness to, in the worksheet, there are affirmations for you to look at if you have it open. There are also, by the way, affirmations in here for you if you have it colored in or defined. So you don't have to do that right now, but this is just there for you to go look at later after the class when you think about what you're learning here today. I'm going to go through the 9 open centers, and I want you to think about your own story and your own life and how maybe these questions that I'm going to pose to you or these behavioral patterns might be affecting what you choose or how you choose what you choose in your life. So if you have the head center open, that's the triangle pointing up. This is a pressure center, and there's a tendency to be under pressure to try to figure everything out. And most importantly, to try to answer every question and everybody else's questions. And that pressure to understand and to know and to get those answers can sometimes create a fear of the unknown. The ajna, we call this the Divine Translator Center in Quantum Human Design, is a center for processing concrete information. The head center, by the way, is the center for inspiration. The ajna is where we translate inspiration into, okay, what am I going to do? It's a database. It's a storage center of data. And when it is open, if you have this white on your chart, you're usually under pressure to figure things out, and you're under pressure to be certain. But you're not designed to be certain when this center is open. You're actually designed to see information from 360 degrees different perspectives. You're designed to understand information, not to be certain. But sometimes that pressure to figure things out and stick with an idea can make it really, really difficult for you to be yourself because you try to lock on to a fixed way of thinking about things, and that's not actually what you're here to do. And that creates oftentimes a fear of uncertainty and a pressure to have things all figured out because the unknown can be very scary when you have that configuration. The throat center or the activation center in quantum human design, this is the center for communication and for manifestation into action. So this center, when it is undefined, or basically another way of saying this is if you're a generator, projector, or reflector, this is probably true for all of you, there's a tendency to struggle for recognition and attention. You need to be seen and recognized to access energy and to be heard. And if you have never received good, healthy recognition and attention, then you may have learned some manipulative things to do to get recognition and attention, or the drive to be seen and heard is so huge for you. That's part of your story. You might be creating things that you think are going to get you recognition and attention because somewhere along the way you learned that when I'm seen and heard, I'm loved. And that recognition equals love. And so sometimes we try to get things for recognition rather than things that we really want to do or have for ourselves. The G center, that's the heart in the center of the chart. When your G center is open, there's a tendency for you to struggle with finding your direction in life. It's easy for your direction to be co-opted by the energy of the people around you. And there's a tendency when the center is open to question your lovability. And so the open G center sometimes makes decisions based on, will people love me if I do this? The will center or the resource center in quantum human design is where our self-worth is held. It's where our energy for value and values are held. And oftentimes when we have an open will center, and that's going to be most of you, we struggle with self-worth. And we are oftentimes motivated to do things or make choices based on our ability or our desire to prove our value to others. Sometimes what we do is we push really hard when we don't have the energy because we're trying to prove our value, because we have a really interesting lie happening in our human story that says your value is deeply tied to how hard you work. You're valuable because you exist. That's it. There's nothing you have to do. There's nothing you have to prove. You're valuable because you exist. The spleen or the self-actualization center, that's the triangle on the left. When it's open, this is the center for instinct, intuition, and time and timing, and your immune system. When it's open, there's a tendency to hold on for longer than you should because it feels safe. And so sometimes when you have the center open, you have a hard time creating because you're holding on to too much and there's no room for anything else. We talked a little bit already about the emotional solar plexus. That's a triangle on the other side of the chart. When you're an emotional empath, there's a tendency to get through life being super, super nice all the time and not deal with truth or consequences. You just keep everybody happy because when everybody else is happy, it feels good to you because the outer environment is regulated. And now you can be like, okay, cool. I don't have to be in an emotional flurry. Again, remember the goal is to learn to regulate your own emotional well being and not let everybody else's emotional status knock you off your center. The sacral center, if you are a manifestor, projector, or reflector, or in quantum human design, we call you initiator, calibrator, and orchestrator. When you are one of those three types, the center will always be open on your chart. The shadow theme of this chart is, do you know when enough is enough? And sometimes, again, you start putting all these themes together because most of you will have more than one center open. You start to see a story unfolding. If you don't, let's say you have an open will center and an open emotional solar plexus and an open sacral. Now we see a very interesting behavioral potential, right? We see somebody who is a people pleaser, right? Try to keep everybody happy because that's how I prove my value, by being super nice. And I don't know when enough is enough, right? And so you can start to see where that story might take you into a place of depletion or burnout. Last but not least, the root center, or the divine timing center in quantum human design. This is also a pressure center. So we have the head center and the root center. This is where adrenaline energy lives. So when you have the center white, that'll be half of you. There's pressure, and it's the pressure to get things done because there's this energy. If I just get it done, I can be free, right? If I just get it all done by Friday, I can take the weekend off. But the reality of it is when you have the center open, the pressure never goes away. And that pressure is just, it's always there, right? It's always there. And you have to learn how to work with it so that you can be free anyway, right? A good thing to ask if you have this center open is learn to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I don't do this right now? And usually the answer is nothing, nothing, right? Go play. You need to play as well as work. There's a good balance that has to be struck there. All right, I hope you learned something new about your chart today. And again, just gentle reminder, there's some resources in that handout for you about your centers. The second source of conditioning is imprinting. This comes from your family of origin. This is the belief systems, the expectations, your family history, in addition to your parents' conditioning, right? I was watching something yesterday about women, and the woman who I was watching said, you weren't mothered because your mother was wounded, but your mother was wounded because her mother was wounded, right? That's imprinting. We know from biology and child development that our children are watching us and they are literally imprinting, they're mirroring some of the ways in which we behave. And that is an essential part of your story and your conditioning that we have to take into consideration when we really look at rewriting your own story. The next part of conditioning is generational energy patterns. Now, human design has a very interesting way of explaining this. You actually inherit your human design chart, parts of your chart, from your grandparents. And your children, of course, inherit parts of their chart from your parents. And so we start to see that there is this very interesting intergenerational energetic family dynamic that plays out in families that helps explain a lot of times family patterns and intergenerational family patterns that you might be carrying and why your relationship with your family might be what it is. Lastly, but definitely, well, not lastly, number 4, we have genetics and epigenetics. So whether we like it or not, some of our personality traits are genetic. And we also know that when we look at DNA, which by the way is way more malleable than most of us were taught in school, that regulating DNA expression are protein codes called epigenes. The protein codes or these epigenes can hold ancestral memory. And so some of what you are reacting to in your story is ancestral programming, things that happened in your lineage that have nothing to do with your life right now, but you are coded with your ancient story. And that can also sometimes cause you to react to life in the way in which you do. And of course, last but definitely not least, we cannot discount our own lived experiences. Our own lived experiences create a lot of our story. When you have a story and you experience something and it causes you to internalize a part of that story, and that becomes part of your identity, right? If you don't take control of that identity and you don't take back control over the story from the lived experience, we're going to talk about this a lot tomorrow, and that lived experience, you start to define yourself as a survivor of a lived experience. Well, surviving is not thriving. And if you identify as a survivor, oftentimes what's happening is you're telling a story about I survived this X, Y, and Z thing. And when that becomes part of your identity, well, then life starts bringing you that same thing to survive over and over and over again. It's part of why, as a breast cancer thriver, that's me, a woman who has had breast cancer in my early 40s, part of why I do not call myself a breast cancer survivor is because, first of all, I did way more than survive it. And secondly, that's not my identity, right? And identifying sometimes as a survivor can have a little bit of a shadow effect and making sure we're not staying stuck in the story of surviving and going beyond. So there's some challenges when it comes to deconditioning. So when we start thinking about, okay, I have the story, it came from all these different places, I want to change that story, it's a little bit tricky. It's a big process, right? And so we have some challenges that we have to look at. The first challenge is, well, how do we choose and to create a healthy set of meanings that allows you to create well-being in every area of your life? So how do we choose what meanings to have? And how do we know if those meanings are healthy, right? That's problem number 1. So one of the things that I love about human design is it gives you a really good systematic way to begin to explore the meanings that you're working with in your story and how to consciously begin to calibrate those meanings in a way that's in greater alignment with your well-being. So human design is a way of cataloging the story that you're telling. It's a way of changing your personal narrative. It gives you a database, if you will, of all the parts of your story. It shows you your soul curriculum and it teaches you your unique path to optimizing your life. So remember, your human design chart is part of what's in that filter. Now, if we go back to the esoteric roots of human design is a synthesis of Eastern and Western astrology, the Hindu chakra system, Judaic Kabbalah, the Chinese I Ching, and quantum physics. Well, what do all these systems have in common? Archetypes, right? They're just systems that are comprised of archetypes. Well, an archetype is just an idea, a symbol, a pattern, or a character type in a story. Money is an archetype, right? Money doesn't mean anything until we give it meaning. When we give it meaning, then it becomes part of a story. So we are each living our own personal story that's comprised of all the archetypes in your quantum human design chart. So if you took your chart, this is actually my chart. If I took the names of all the gates and the parts of my chart and put it together in a word cloud, it would look like this, right? Here's the thing about archetypes. they can show up in a lot of different ways, right? I always use the image of a diamond because we tend to think we're this, we're one thing, right? And actually, that one thing, that one part of our story can be expressed in an infinite number of different ways. The archetypes in our chart really exist in a quantum field of information, and we can be experiencing the conditioned expression. We'll talk about that again tomorrow. What is the conditioned expression of the different types? What is the shadow? What is the pain? What is the Ra used to call this the not self expression of who we are? Once we start remembering who we are and we get back in the body and we start remembering what right feels like in the body and what wrong feels like in the body, and we start the process of taking back control over the story, then we move ourselves to the baseline expression. So in traditional human design, all the language in traditional human design is the baseline expression. This is what happens when you follow your strategy and authority over time. You bring yourself back to baseline. That's a big step in the healing story, right? But then what's so beautiful is that archetypes are unlimited. This is kind of in a curved condition to quantum, but really it's a spectrum. And it can go, pretty far in both directions and unlimited in both directions. But we really don't want to look at the unlimited condition side. We want to look at the unlimited quantum side. You're not designed to live at baseline. Baseline is, okay, good. I know who I am. I'm back in control a little bit. Really, when we look at the archetypes in your story, your goal is to go from baseline to infinite, right? And so when we look at your human design chart, you can start to use that chart as a pathway to optimizing yourself, to actualizing yourself, to taking your potential and fulfilling it to its furthest capacity. In fact, that's your life purpose, is to take your story and live it to its highest, fullest potential. And when you understand that every part of your chart, your type, your profile lines, your centers, your gates, your everything in this chart is just a collection of little archetypes all put together in the story that is you. And you start to understand that once you can move yourself back to baseline by reconnecting with your strategy and your authority, you can then begin the journey, the adventure of going beyond, of taking yourself to a bigger, bolder, more juicy, infinite expression of the story of who you are. And we're going to do a little bit of that tomorrow. Now, your story is actually stored in your subconscious mind. And it's actually, whether we like it or not, it is running the show. And I like the analogy of thinking of your subconscious mind and your story is kind of like a filing cabinet. And in that filing cabinet is held all these files, right? This is kind of what my office looks like some days, right? These files that, are basically programming the conscious brain to search. It's actually not even the conscious brain, the unconscious brain to search for information and experiences and opportunities out here that match the files, right? And for a lot of us, the truth is, our files inside our subconscious mind kind of look like this because they're conditioned. It's not really who you are. You've got about 95% of what's stored in your filing cabinet in your subconscious was put there. It was put there by your conditioning. And remember, it's running the show. Your brain is searching constantly for evidence to support the files in the filing cabinet. When you start changing your story, you start changing what's stored in the filing cabinet. And really what we know is that we're happiest and most abundant, and I believe magical, when we are creating an alignment with the highest expression that's moving from baseline to quantum of the archetypes that comprise your authentic self and your unique energy blueprint. That's your quantum human design. So you have to know who you're designed to be, what archetypes are part of your soul curriculum in order to know how you create and what you truly want. So step one in reclaiming this control over this process is where does your story come from? When we started talking about conditioning, where did that story come from? And I want to just bring to your awareness, some of that story is coming from what we call the collective story vault. Tomorrow, I'm going to read you a story from the collective story vault because I want you to feel what that feels like. So many of the stories that we're telling, in fact, I would say every single story that we're telling is some variation of a very simple story. And that simple story is victim versus victor. And that's true in your money story. That's true in your relationship story. That's true in your work story. That's true in our politics. That's true in pretty much every single story we're telling. We can distill it down to a very simple metaphor. victim versus victor. That's called polarization or polarized thinking. And part of what's up for us right now, collectively and personally, is we have to decondition polarized thinking. There is no us, them. There's only us. Or there is no you and them. There's only you. And when you can take back control of the story, and again, tomorrow I'm going to teach you how to do this so that you become the victor in the story no matter what happened, you start to shift the entire narrative and you stop surviving and you're not even winning. This isn't even about winning. You start creating. You start being sovereign. You start being able to engineer and build the life you dream of, and ultimately not just your own life, but the life, you influence the lives of the people you love, the lives in your community, and ultimately the lives of the people on the planet. When we stop playing this binary, polarized story game. So tomorrow we're going to talk about how do we do it differently. The second challenge in rewriting your story is how do you know what meanings you need to decondition? And again, the chart and understanding the parts of your chart give us a really clear path, which we'll talk about tomorrow. And then in step 3, you have to take control of the narrative. You get to decide who you are and how you are. You get to write that story. And again, that's a lot of what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So let's talk about what creates choice. The amygdala, which is that fear-based reactive part of the brain, is running off of those old files. That's no choice. You have no choice when you're living from the amygdala. You're a purely reactive being. React, 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 react. If you want to become intentional, you have to take back control over the cortical self, that part of your brain that's intentional, that's directed, that's goal-oriented, that's working towards your fulfillment. I'm going to show you how to do that tomorrow. All right. When you can do that, you learn how to stop reacting and be deliberate with your response. And really, the bottom line is, I know I'm stressing this over and over again, you got to take back control of your story. So this is the part where I'm telling you now, this is the opportunity that I want to lay out for you. Over the last 25 years, I've put together an integrated system to work with the energy field, your human design, the subtle body, using flower essences, and coaching to create what I call the quantum alignment system. This system is comprised of flower essences, proprietary sound frequencies that clear the energy blueprint. We work with EFT and quantum human design to clear the mental and emotional layer. We work with a very proprietary way of working directly with the quantum field to create what you want. I teach you a process called Story Lab that includes writing and coaching, and I teach you how to coach people to change actions on a manifested level. By the way, I do want to let you know that I have a lot more content after this. So I invite you to hold tight. You don't have to listen to this opportunity if it doesn't really resonate with you, but hold tight because I do have more content for you after this. When we implement the quantum alignment system with our clients, we get on average a 3 to 7 point increase on resiliency, which I'm going to teach you about in just a minute. We see significant decreases in physical and emotional pain, significant increases in a sense of well-being, and results that last for 6 months or longer, including, by the way, improved immune function. The quantum alignment system training is more than just a certification. It's literally a transformational journey. So you do this and it's for you. You will go through an incredible transformation yourself as a practitioner, a student practitioner, and you will be given a set of skills that will help you just facilitate tremendous transformations for others. This is what's really kind of different is traditional personal development only addresses the symptoms, even coaching really oftentimes only addresses the behaviors and the symptoms. What quantum alignment system does, it actually gets down to the root of the metaphors, the stories that you're telling, and it clears those metaphors by combining quantum human design, EFT, energy alignment, custom flower essences, sound frequencies, and this way of integrating this whole energy level system of bringing people back into the full expression of who they are. So this is not just, again, for you, it's also for you and for your clients, and it's actually part of a movement. Right? We are really part of a movement. When you train to do this, you're part of a movement that empowers individuals to unlock their potential and create lasting change in their story so that they can intentionally and deliberately take back control over that story. This is different in that it is holistic healing. It integrates multiple proven modalities for deep transformation. We go way beyond traditional human design and we use quantum human design as a foundation that extends well into healing and coaching. This is rooted in evidence, scientific evidence. We also offer, though, with it a spiritual approach. So it's a beautiful place where we blend science and spirituality, where we work at with leading edge science and ancient wisdom in this proven effective system. I will be your teacher. I created the system. I've been using the system for 25 years. I personally am teaching this program, and I will share with you that you will get dramatic increases in well-being, clarity, and purpose. And in addition to that, for yourself, you'll be able to give that to others. So this is more than just human design. This is human design plus energy psychology plus holistic modalities such as flower remedies and energetic modalities and practical applications. We'll talk about real life coaching circumstances and integrate this whole thing into this holistic system. The program includes a comprehensive pre-recorded content, so there's a lot of it that you can study on your own in your own timing, but there are also mandatory required live components. You get a printed quantum alignment system manual that you can always use kind of as training wheels while you're learning. We have live practice sessions and coaching support for integration and hands-on healing. There is an official certification process and recognition and the listing on the quantum alignment system website. By the way, I'll post the listing. I'll have Team Quantum can post the listing to our practitioners, because if you're listening to this program and you're really wanting to change your story and that's really what you want, go hire a quantum alignment system practitioner to help you. This training includes quantum human design professional levels 1 and 2. So if you're new to human design, this training includes quantum human design levels 1 and level 2 and quantum alignment system training, plus everything we've talked about, and our huge, we have a huge thriving community. And in conjunction with that, you will also get trained in a process called Story Lab. So you will also be trained to do Story Lab presentations. Story Lab is a process of intentional story rewriting. That's actually what I'm going to be doing at Omega next year. You will be a Story Lab practitioner. So you will learn how to use intentional storytelling, narrative medicine to help your clients get in there and rewrite their story. This is an incredible process that comes with an entire program that you can either use, literally take the videos in the program and show them to your clients or show them to workshop participants. You don't have to create any content yourself. Or if you want to duplicate the content yourself, you can do that too. So it comes with videos, it comes with trainings, it comes with a manual, it comes with workshops that you can use. It's literally a turnkey coaching process and a turnkey program that you can use to start your business as soon as your training is over. We have students who literally will complete the quantum alignment system training and like the next weekend start their Story Lab training so they can begin the process of using Story Lab to generate leads, to create new clients, to build their business and their practice. So you'll have at the end of this training the ability to do quantum human design levels 1 and level 2 readings, the ability to implement the quantum alignment system as a practitioner, and you'll be a Story Lab facilitator, which means you'll have 4 different revenue streams, or at least 3 different revenue streams, counting quantum human design, to start your business off so that you can get grounded and going. Look, I want you to do this. If you feel called, I want you to do this because I want as many quantum alignment system practitioners out in the world as possible, because I believe that if we all start changing our stories, both our personal stories, and if you want to do this for yourself, you should. It's a great program for your own personal growth and development. And if you also feel called to do it for others, it's an incredible opportunity for us to start shifting the stories of the world. When we start changing our own personal stories, we change the environment, the ecosystem for everyone else around us. We make it possible for other people to change their stories too. When we do this work professionally, we facilitate it in a very powerful way. And I really, truly believe that what the world needs more than anything in the world right now is a new story, a better story. So it's flexible. You're going to study probably about 5 to 7 hours per week. Pre-recorded materials are self-paced. And I said, we do have live sessions and community engagement. If you have questions, Hannah's going to post a link in the chat where you can go have a meeting with Hannah and talk about this program if this feels right and aligned for you. And I'm going to give you 33% off as my thank you for having you here today. That means the program is regularly $6,297. With the 33% off, that's $4,219. Plus, we have very generous payment plan options. So if you feel called, talk to Hannah or go straight to registration and get yourself started. If you enroll by August the 21st, you can take advantage of the 33% off savings. We have a special bonus. The first 15 who pay in full, you will join me personally for a private 15-person private 2 hour story lab group. It's a coaching session. We're going to work on shifting whatever it is that you think is holding you back. Okay, so this early bonus is only to early enrollees. So the first 15 people who register, you're going to get a bonus 2 hour story lab with me. We're going to identify subconscious beliefs. We're going to disrupt societal conditioning about charging for healing work. And we're going to show you how to reclaim your voice so you can take your role as a leader in a confident and authoritative way. No prep required to show up. And this is your chance to start transforming from the inside out right now. So, all right. Here's just your, again, reminder, 33% off until the 21st of August. And we'll post all the information for you in the chat. All right. Take a deep breath. I've got 2 more things I want to share with you. All right. First thing, when we talk about, okay, where do we start entering the story? When we look at the chart, where do we start entering the story? There's so much stuff in the chart. This has always been a thing that bothered me. There's too much stuff in the chart. How do we know where to start? So one of the things that I did about 15 years ago is I took all the parts in the chart and I metaphorically put them in a blender and I blended up all the parts of the chart with developmental theory. So adult and child developmental theory. So I looked at Eric Erickson, Richard Barrett, some of the different people who have really looked at ages and stages and phases of people's lives. And I put all that together in with all the archetypes in the human design chart. And what I came up with was at the root of the chart, if we look at all the gates, all the centers, all the profiles, all the types, all the resiliency, all of those parts of the chart, at the root of the chart are 9 base archetypes, 9 core archetypes, 9 parts of the story that have to be functioning at the highest level in order for you to achieve resiliency, optimal well-being, right? So these 9 keys are the root of healing, maturity, health, and resiliency. They have to function at the highest level if you're going to get out of struggle in your chart. These are the root of most pain and trauma, and they create the protective identities that can be at the root of self-sabotage. So I'm going to go through these 9 resiliency keys. Sorry. And as I do that, if you go back to your workbook, I'm going to do this kind of quick. And I want you to know when we do this, the purpose of doing this is not to make you feel crummy about where you are right now. The purpose of doing this is for you to just get a feel for where you at. Tomorrow, we'll start working on rewriting some of this, okay? But I want you to just very quickly, as I go through these slides, go with your first response on a scale of 0 to 10, rank yourself. The low part of the scale, 1 on the scale, there's no 0, 1 on the scale is like, I don't really have a charge on this. This doesn't trigger me. Sorry, I'm saying that backwards again. If you're low on the scale, right? If you're low on the scale, it means it's a problem for you, right? It's a problem for you. So if I show you lovability and you look at lovability and you decide, okay, I'm going to measure my lovability, and you're like, yeah, I don't really think I'm very lovable at all. That's going to be low on the scale. That's going to be like a 1 or a 2 or a 3. If you're like, yeah, I'm lovable. I love everyone. Everyone loves me. I'm totally cool with people don't love me. I don't care. If you're like really good and solid with lovability, that's a 10 or a 9 or an 8, right? So the low numbers mean this is kind of a hurtful place for me. The higher numbers are I'm juicy, I'm good, I'm fine. All right. So I'd love for you to rank yourself on the scale in the worksheet. How lovable do you believe you are? Do you believe you can be loved and accepted for who you are? You just do a check mark or an X or whatever. The second resiliency key is empowerment. How powerful do you feel you are? How much influence do you feel like you have over your life? Again, I'm going through these quickly because I don't want you to overthink them. The third one is courage. Does fear keep you stuck? Does fear keep you from fulfilling your joy? Do you let fear rob you? The next one is decisiveness. Do you know how to choose what's right for you? Do you know how to choose what's right for you? Human design kind of gives us a hack for this one, right? The next one is emotional wisdom. So if you have a defined emotional solar plexus, remember that's the big triangle on the right-hand side. The question is, does emotional energy keep you from acting deliberately, right? If we're emotionally defined, sometimes we're reacting emotionally. So does emotional energy keep you from acting deliberately? If you have an open emotional solar plexus, we've talked about that a little bit, do you compromise what you want to keep other people happy? Next one is self-trust. Do you trust yourself? That's a big one. Next one is vitality. The opposite of vitality is burnout. Are you fully expressing your life force and your energy? Next one is authenticity. Do you feel free to be who you really are? Do you feel free to be who you really are? You feel safe, fully expressing yourself. Next one is self-worth. Do you know your value? Do you feel valuable? If we organize these all on a pyramid, again, it doesn't always work this way, but it's really interesting to note that most of us, to some degree, struggle with lovability and self-worth. That's kind of the base of the pyramid. If we get lovability and self-worth handled, usually the rest of the resiliency keys are not a big issue. But oftentimes what will happen is most of us are struggling to some degree with lovability and self-worth. By the way, that's the heart chakra. When we struggle with lovability and self-worth, then it makes it problematic for us sometimes to be authentic, to trust ourselves, to be emotionally wise, to feel powerful, to be courageous and decisive. And what oftentimes happens is if we don't have that strong foundation, it impacts our energy and then we burn out. And in fact, if you want to learn more about this, I did a TEDx talk, a COVID TEDx talk about 5 years ago on burnout and the relationship between burnout and resiliency. If we want to be resilient and vital, we have to tackle lovability and self-worth. And burnout is a huge issue. It's a huge, huge issue. I mean, burnout is actually classified by the World Health Organization as an actual disease, right? And of course, the World Health Organization says burnout comes from bad work circumstances, too much work, not enough money. I actually think that there's a deeper root than bad work circumstances. It comes from struggling with lovability and self-worth. You can be burned out and have a great job. I've seen it over and over again. And it has nothing to do with workplace quality and everything to do with lovability and self-worth. So if we look at the chart, what we see is that the chart gives us a storytelling path. And the storytelling path is that the goal of our character, our main character in our story, is to become resilient. So if we were going to rewrite your story and start looking at your chart as a pathway to your story, we see that the goal is to become resilient. The main character in your story is represented by your type. We're going to work on your main character tomorrow. The healing path, the way to get your main character back on track for being resilient, is to follow your strategy and authority. The profile in your chart represents characteristics of your main character. And the centers and the gates, for those of you who are novelists, every hero's journey or every great story has a flaw, has a sacred flaw in the middle of it, right? Our hero, our main character, usually has to deal with something. And usually that something they have to deal with is inside of them, right? We have our own soul curriculum. That soul curriculum or that sacred flaw is represented by the centers and the gates in your chart. And so that represents oftentimes what do we have to grapple with and wrestle with in order to emerge from our story, not the victim, but the hero, the heroine, the victor, right? We win at our own story, by the way. It's not a competition, it's your own story. You become the one who walks away in charge of your own story. And so, let's see. It's kind of where I want to leave you today. Some things to think about, some things to contemplate in the context of resiliency, where you've been, your own healing, your own story, and your own path. I want to end today with where I want to start tomorrow. All right. If you don't take control of your own story, if you don't take back control of your story, you're going to be vulnerable to living in somebody else's story. You're going to be following somebody else's story. And it might not be a great story. It might not be a story that reflects the full potential of who you are. And it might not be the story that you were designed to live. And so today I want to encourage you to go through the rest of the worksheet and the contemplations in there. So some pretty deep contemplations in there to really think about your story. What are you telling? What parts of your story are showing up, and what parts of your life is your story showing up in? And I want you to think about, are you telling a story that isn't even yours, right? Are you telling a story that isn't even yours? And what needs to happen for you to rewrite that story? Today, the goal was to get you really thinking about, where does your story come from? Tomorrow, I'm going to teach you a very fun, very practical, very easy, mind-blowing way to start taking back control over your story so that you're not living in somebody else's story, so that you're being true to who you are and you're in charge. You get to activate that quantum creative power that is yours. So I want to thank you all very much for joining me. I want to remind you all again, join me tomorrow, same time, same place. We're going to be bring tomorrow paper and pens, markers, any kind of art stuff that you might want, right? So I'm sorry, I have to read this. Okay. I want you to know that we're going to be playing. Literally, we're going to be playing. So absolutely going to be playing. So I will see you here tomorrow at noon. If you would take a moment, we have a poll, right? Yeah, I was gonna say, if you would take a moment, my goal, as I said, my number one goal is to give you a content-rich, transformative experience that you can walk away with that will help you reconnect to your heart, your soul, and the power of your story. I work very hard to make sure that everything that we produce and create here is the best that we can do. If you give me feedback on the poll, I would really appreciate it, because it helps me make sure that we are giving you the best content and the best experiences possible. So thank you. If you would just take a moment and fill out the poll, I appreciate it deeply. I will see you all tomorrow. Take good care of yourselves. Be well. Oh, I will show you one more thing if you haven't already seen it. I know it's my birthday next week, so I get to do this. Buy my book. It's coming out next week, August 20th, Quantum Wellness. I am so excited to get this book out into the world. This is a very powerful, very systematic way to approach looking at your story. We're going to do some of the stuff from this book tomorrow. So I'm very excited to share this book with you. It's my birthday present to me, I think. So, all right, take good care of yourselves. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.